Chapter 460 Chapter 461, Bordeaux Wine. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Under normal circumstances, Eve would never allow them to order such a large number of dishes. Even though this restaurant belonged to his family, the cost of $50,000 worth of food, even after deducting the profit, would still be around $20,000. He would rather spend that amount of money on women. How could he agree to spend this money treating everyone to a meal? However, today was different. He was going all out to win over Mina. After all, a stunning beauty like Mina couldn't be won over with just $10,000 or $20,000. So Eve nodded and agreed. Furthermore, he felt that $50,000 was a bit too little, so he looked at everyone and said, "Since it's everyone's first time visiting Port Hampton, I should be a good host. How about we open a bottle of red wine to celebrate?" Upon hearing his words, everyone turned to look at him with astonishment on their faces. They knew they had already ordered enough, and were afraid he would be unhappy, so they were planning to order less. But to their surprise, Eve not only didn't mind their large order, but he even wanted to open another bottle of red wine. The gap between rich heirs is truly immense. Sasha couldn't help but sigh softly as she observed him. "Oh, by the way, add a bottle of Bordeaux wine." Just at that moment, Eve turned to the waiter and made the request. Update on B Omicron X0 VEL.C Omicron M. Bordeaux wine. Dustin, having some knowledge about red wine, was instantly stunned and his expression filled with shock upon hearing this. "What's wrong? Don't you like Bordeaux wine? If you don't, it's fine, we can choose another bottle. We have quite a selection of red wines." Eve smiled and asked Dustin after noticing his reaction. "Dustin, what's the matter? Mr. Eve is treating us to a meal, and he even ordered wine. Yet you're still complaining about this and that. Isn't that a bit too much?" Sasha turned her head and glanced at him, her expression showing displeasure. "Yeah, Dustin, you're asking for too much." Mavis chimed in as well. These two girls didn't know much about red wine, so they thought he was complaining because the wine Eve ordered wasn't good. No, one didn't mean that. He quickly waved his hand and continued explaining, "Bordeaux wine is a famous brand, and this kind of wine is not cheap. A bottle costs at least $20,000 to $30,000, so one thought it's a bit expensive." $20,000 to $30,000 for a bottle of wine. After hearing Dustin's words, everyone was dumbfounded, their gazes dull, and their expressions extremely shocked. No one expected Eve to order such an expensive wine. "Mr. Eve, isn't that wine too expensive? We've already ordered quite a lot earlier, and if we order more wine, how much will this meal cost?" Sasha turned to Eve eagerly, her expression filled with excitement. "Don't worry about the money. It's just a bottle of Bordeaux wine. It's not that expensive. You're all Clara's friends, and as long as you enjoy this meal, it's fine." Eve replied arrogantly, no longer paying attention to these people. He turned to the waiter and said, "All right, stop standing here. Hurry up and let the kitchen prepare the food. These people are all my good friends, so make sure the chefs in the kitchen do a good job. Don't embarrass me, understood?" "Understood, Mr. Eve." The waiter quickly nodded and left the private room. Sierra had a proud expression on her face upon hearing his words. Eve's words made her feel very honored. Compared to Connor's treatment, it was like night and day. Eve was already treating Sierra so well, even before they were officially together. If they were to be together in the future, it would certainly be even better. Looking at Connor, who couldn't even be bothered to get a membership card, and even mock Sasha, the difference between these two was just too significant. Meanwhile, Connor and Mina paid no attention to them and continued chatting quietly. As for the others, they surrounded Eve, actively flattering him. After about an hour, everyone finally finished their meal. It had to be said that the food at Eve family's restaurant was truly excellent. Although it couldn't compare to Immortal Lake Manor in terms of food, it was still considered one of the best in Port Hampton. Connor thoroughly enjoyed the meal. He didn't have to spend his own money and could still savor so much delicious food. He was in a great mood. From beginning to end, he kept his head down and focused on eating, completely unconcerned about what others thought. When Eve and Sierra observed Connor's demeanor, they became even more convinced that he wasn't a rich heir. If Connor were truly a wealthy second generation, he wouldn't eat so messily. He appeared like someone who had never been to such a fancy restaurant before. Everyone else had finished eating and drinking, while Connor was the only one still holding his chopsticks. "Where do you guys plan to go later?" Just then, Eve suddenly asked. "We're planning to go to the villa that Mina rented for us. Tomorrow is my birthday, and we're intending to have a birthday party there." Sierra replied softly. "Oh, that works out. One don't have anything else to do, so I'll accompany you guys to take a look later," Eve said with a smile. "Great. With you around, we'll have much more convenience in Port Hampton," Sasha happily exclaimed upon hearing his words. "All right, since everyone is almost finished eating, let's go and check out the villa. Where is it located? I'll have the driver arrange the itinerary for you," Eve casually suggested. Upon hearing his words, everyone's faces became even happier. After all, they wouldn't have to hail a taxi if they followed him. The villa one rented is on Jackson Avenue. Mina, seeing Eve's enthusiasm, naturally didn't refuse. "All right, let's go now." Eve readily nodded, then stood up and prepared to walk towards the exit of the private room. "Oh, Eve, did you forget something?" But just at that moment, Sierra suddenly called out. "Zero.